In this video, I'll look at fine-tuning the lighting and materials in my scene. I have a goof I need to fix here, and we can see it in this region render. My bananas, as I've called them, are green. My flowers have green stems and bright colors. But my lilies, we can see a leaf of it back here, are an odd yellow-green, and the stripes aren't really showing. I'll press M to pull up my material editor and take a look. I'll let it redraw the sample spheres, and we can see that the lilies are, well, slightly the wrong color. I'll pick that material and scroll to zoom in. What it looks like is that map 1, my same map I'm using for all my different plants, is mapped to the wrong place. Instead of being mapped to overall diffuse coloration and unscattered diffuse color, I've accidentally put it to unscattered diffuse color and weight. I'll double click on the material, and then I can simply drag the M for map from unscattered diffuse weight right up to overall diffuse color. And in this case, I'll swap them. Notice we've got options for instance, copy, and swap, depending on how we'd like to treat our maps. I'll click OK. And with that map swapped, I get the right color. There's that rich green instead of that odd yellow. Now I'll also play with the back surface scatter color while I'm here. I'd like, when we're behind these or under these leaves, that they have a bit of yellow going on. I'll click on that color swatch for back surface scatter color, swing the hue more towards yellow, bring up the saturation, and maybe add a little less green, so it's a rich warm yellow. I'll click OK and take this same color and drag it to the front surface scatter color, copying. I'll click on that color then, and just bring a little more green into it. This way, when the leaves scatter in the front, they're kind of green, and from the back, they're a rich yellow. I'll bring up this scatter radius too. We can see it's just about 0.4 of an inch. I'll pull this up and try a back surface scatter radius of 2 and a depth of 2. And I'll also bring up the back surface scatter weight to 0.9. I'll have to test this and see how it looks. But this should give me a rich yellow when I'm viewing the leaves backlit by the sun. Because these are applied to multiple objects, any updates I do here will apply through all the leaves having this material. Now I'll do another render test, but first, to economize on time, I'll get some other lights in. I like my lights here. This one, Photometric Light 2, could use to be renamed. I'd like to know what they are, and so I'll call this one Bounce Light Panel 01. My thought is that I'll have two kinds of bounce light. Panels for softly underlighting leaves and points for adding sparkle to certain areas. I'll rename the point as well. Now I've got Bounce Light Point 01 and I'm ready to clone these. What I'll probably do, in a top view, pressing F3 for wireframe and Z to zoom extents, is switch over to lights in my selections and pick my panel. I'll hold Shift and start to drag it around, assuming I get the camera in, so this sits under leaves, cloning as an instance. I'll do a few of them. Some of the clones of these will have to wait till we get the camera in, so we can get the bounce light in the right place to be seen by the camera without excessively lighting. I'll take my point then and try to put it near the flowers because I like the way they shine, also cloning as an instance. I'll zoom in into a perspective, press F3 for shaded, and make sure I'm not sitting behind a giant leaf, and try another test render. I'll see how this looks, maybe using the zoom tool to pull back just a little bit. I'll make sure I've got one of my big lily leaves in the scene and my other plants, and I'll try a test based on this region. I'll hit render production and see how this goes. This is working really well. What I can see is, now that I've restored the correct color, the stripes are really showing. The bounce light underneath the other plants is perking them up, and the shines are really making those flowers pop out. Here's the other things I'd like to adjust. I think that I'd like to lower the amount of daylight so the bounce light contribution has a little more weight to it. I'll press H to bring up the Select from Scene dialog. Notice that I've turned off Display Geometry, and that way it's just my light showing. Because it's an assembly under the compass, the daylight has to be opened up. I'll select my daylight, and I think what I'll do is take the power out of the sky a little bit. We had put the multiplier up to 1.1, but it feels like that sky with that haze is overpowering my lighting. I'll pull this down to 0.65, and that should give me a little less power in the sky. That's going to let my bounce lights show a little more. I can also pull back the sun just a bit if I like, maybe 1.2, and I'll try a quick test render. This is better. With a little less power in the sky and the sun, my colors still pop out, and the shadows really have some depth going on. I've got some great softness going on, especially right here as we can see a big soft shadow and then some hard ones next to it. I can move around the bounce lights a little bit, but I'll wait to see my camera. I'll also play with the exposure, pressing 8 for the environment dialog, and looking at what I've got going on. It's a fast shutter and a fairly slow or stopped aperture, and a decently sensitive film. What I may want to do is just push apart the highs, mids, and shadows a bit. Right now this mid-tone value, 1.5, may be brightening up my mids just a little too much. I'll pull it back to 1.3, and that's going to dim the scene, as we just saw a little bit more dimness right here in the view. I can burn the highs just a bit more, maybe 0.2, and I should really see some range going on in there. I'm going to leave the shadows alone, as I don't want them to be excessively dark. I think this will work nicely. We can keep adjusting a bit, but it's important to get in the camera so we know where to light to. Finally, I'll check my materials. I'll pan over and take a look underneath one of those big leaves. I'll pan down using the mouse wheel and dolly in if I need. Standing under here, panning up, and looking up under those giant leaves, I should see some pretty good color coming on. I'll use that same render region, although really you could redraw the region if you wanted. I can already see in the final gather that it's working nicely. Underneath the leaf, even though it's in shadow, I've got a little bit of glow on the edge. I can see the stripes even in the darkness, and it's got great contrast next to the other leaves in the scene. Right here we can really see this. Light in the sun, dark underneath, yellow glowing through on the edges, working fantastically. My scene's ready for a camera. If you like, and if you've got multiple lights listed, the other way you can get to them is through the light lister. For example, let's say instead of instances that I've copied around my bounce lights, and I need a way to find them and manipulate a bunch of them at once. I'll select one of my lights and right-click, and I get a different quad menu available because I have a light selected. I'll choose the dialog next to Light On, and this is the light lister. What it says is that we've got a couple of photometrics, a sky and a sun. Really, what this actually says is we have instance lights, bounce light point 1 and 2, and bounce light panel 1 through 4. Because they're instances, they show up as a drop-down list. What this light lister lets me do is pick lights and edit their properties very quickly, maybe increasing the intensity on all of my bounce lights perhaps, or changing their colors. I can also change things like the sky, quickly and easily, the haze and multiplier and so forth, or also the sun, its softness and its samples. It's a handy way to get to lots of lights and be able to turn them off and on and manipulate things that you'd want to get to, but don't want to go digging on the modifier panel. We can tweak our lights and really bring out the look. And with that in mind, it's time to get some cameras in. The final step in lighting, especially in a theatrical venue like this, where we're going to fly through what we have of a jungle here, and this is different from, let's say, a game environment where it's possible to go anywhere, is that we need to get the camera in so we can light to what the camera sees. If it's not on the camera, don't worry about it. Make the view in the camera look right.